Welcome everyone. The Hospitality Prophet today with Rick Braa. He's going to talk about finishing strong in 2021. Thank you right now to US Bank for sponsoring today's episode. I'm going to drop their link into the chat so everybody can take a look at their payment processing program that we offer with them. Today we are here with Lex Nepomuceno and Rick Braa. If you have questions, please feel free to drop them into the Q&A and we can answer them for you. And with that, I will go ahead and hand it off to Lex and Rick.
Thanks, Lisa. Rick and I were talking a little bit earlier about analogies and comparisons. And Rick, you said that basically Q4 for the hospitality business is basically like Black Friday for regular retailers. Do you want to go into that example?
Sure. So in Western Washington in particular, unlike a lot of the United States, we have a silhouette of Mount Rainier with the exception of Paradise being on the opposite side. So we start at the beginning of the year very, very low, and then it works up all the way through summer. And then there's a huge drop after Labor Day, about 2 weeks after Labor Day, really. That continues to drop down, and then it works its way up, and then it peaks through the holidays, and then it drops to the floor again. So very much like the silhouette of Mount Rainier. So this is the time that you do want to finish strong. It's not the time to kind of whimper out. So this is the time to pour fuel on the fire.
All right, so let's go ahead and get started with your presentation here. You've got some great examples and best practices that restaurant and hospitality operators should really apply in this very important quarter.
Great. All right. So there's a lot of anxiety right now around what's going on with the employee retention credit. And I was fortunate after hours on the phone, finally getting a hold of somebody at the IRS to figure out what's really going on with the money. So a lot of people filed for 2020 ERC back in May or March, April, May for 2020. So when I spoke to her, who was very pleasant, she basically said, look, I haven't seen a return hit my desk that is less than 200 days old. So they're 200 days behind. So I would say don't expect to see that money anytime soon for 2020. So the issue there is you've got 3 years to file from the due date. If you haven't done 2020 yet, go ahead and do that. But they're kind of treating it like they have a big window here. I wouldn't be surprised to see this drag on into 2021 based on how much volume they have. So basically they explained that, look, when the pandemic hit, we had safety protocols that we had to go to, including remote work. We also lost some people. And then they got this massive volume of refund requests greater than 2 million. So that is a ton of ERC 941 amendments for the IRS to complete. And they've been completing forms between phone calls. So when you call the IRS, if you call the IRS, you're slowing them down from processing these 941s. So it was ironic they have another team, but we questioned, don't you just have dedicated staff? And she said, not just dedicated staff, it's all of us, all hands on deck, but we're completing the forms between calls with nice people like you, which we of course promptly hung up the phone after that so that they could get back to work. So the ERC for Q1, Q4, make sure that you're maximizing your PPP. A lot of people just turned in their PPP for forgiveness and gave them all your payroll. So you want to make sure that you are maximizing your PPP. And in 2021, you're going to want to really be on diligent. So we analyze every single paycheck and how much should be used for PPP and how much should be used for ERC. So PPP, obviously you want to have completely forgiven, but you back that down to 60%, and then you maximize that ERC. So ERC, everybody in Washington, because you were partially shut down, qualifies for Q1, and Q2, provided that you have a dining space that was shut down. If you're just strictly a drive-through, that's a different matter. But if you have dining space that you were restricted from using in Q1 and Q2, then you're going to qualify automatically. Q3 is based on whether really you were down more than 20% in Q2 over the same quarter in 2019. So if you were, you'll qualify for Q3. And if you're down for Q3 more than 20% over Q3 of 2019, you will also qualify for Q4. So it stops in the quarter in which your sales reach 80% of the 2019 same quarter. So that's important to note. So many people are going to qualify for Q3 and Q4, provided that they don't pull that back. It is on the chopping block in this legislation of these massive bills. One of the funding mechanisms for the bill is to remove ERC for Q4. But the longer it takes, the better it is for us, because if they get into December, then it's going to be, I think, pretty tough for them to pull back the ERC credit for Q4. So they'll have to find another source. Don't count on the money until summer. They have said that 2020 takes precedent over 2021. So if you're filing 2021, just beware that they are still working on 2020, and they will be for some time. So don't count on seeing that money until at least summer, maybe even later. Based on that whole 3 years to file from the due date, they could really stretch it out. They do have tax season coming up again. They just finished the latest tax season, but it will come up again about the third week in January to slow things down. For those of you that were lucky enough to receive the Restaurant Revitalization Fund, congratulations. There is still some interest in funding, but it's really being overshadowed by the infrastructure bills and the climate change agendas. So the last congressional action was on 8/7, and that was the $48 billion bill. There's been 3 bills that have been introduced. The first one was for $60 billion, and it had 220 sponsors. This one is the latest. It's $48 billion, and there's 20 co-sponsors on this one. So it's been read and it's on to committee. It's been read twice, actually. So if you received RRF, be sure to use as much of the funds this year as possible and report the amount used by 12/31. That's very important, because there is a clause that basically you swore to that said, I need the money. So if you get to the end of the year and you haven't used any of the money, they may frown upon that, trigger an audit, and pull it back. So I think the odds are slender, but you're going to want to make sure that you claim some of those funds for February 15th through the end of this year. And in particular, when you file, some people have already filed and reported how much of the funds they've used, but you're going to want to get that done. And you're going to also want to make sure you've used a good chunk of that money by 12/31. So you swore that you needed it, so they're going to expect that you use it. And so just real quickly, just to run through, you can use it for payroll, sick leave, healthcare. You can read that whole outline there. You can use it for mortgage obligations, so principal and interest. No prepayment of principal and interest on a mortgage obligation. That's different than the COVID-19 EIDL that we're going to take a look at. Rent, obviously, debt service, very similar to number 2. The utilities, basically anything you can use this for. Accounting, want to make sure you use lots of it on accounting. But you can go back and get those from February 15th up until the point that you started using PPP, and then you can skip over your PPP covered period if there are expenses that you don't want to include for PPP round 1, or you used for round 1 forgiveness. Otherwise, claim those as long as you did not use them for ERC. So no double dipping in any of these programs. That will make the IRS very upset and the SBA very upset. And there could be fines on that. So getting to the COVID-19 EIDL working capital loan, they've actually added that on there. So I get a lot of questions around this particular loan and whether you should take it or not. My personal belief is you should take it. There is a personal guarantee for any amount over 200,000, so that's something to consider. But they began approving these on 10/8, so you were able to go up to 2 million, provided that you qualify for 2 million. But you can apply now, and you've got to be submitted by 12/31 or by the expiration of the funds. So if they run out of money, they're not going to put more money in. So sooner than later. It's very easy to apply, very similar to the second round after they fix the website for the first EIDL loan. Very simple, straightforward, a lot of attesting, easy to run through that application. Probably take you 20 minutes after you get all the information put together. 30-year fixed 3.75, 24-month deferral. If you qualified for $2 million, it would be plus or minus $10,000, about 10,300 or so. Because you do accrue the interest in that 24-month payment deferral period. So $10,000 a month, 3.75% money. You can use it for your operating expenses. So basically everything, and a lot of people have kind of personal debt and investors, and maybe they've got triggers to flip an 80-20 where they've got an investor and the investor gets 80% of the distributions till he or she is paid back or they are paid back. And then it flips to 80-20 to the operator. This is a way to kind of clean that up as well. So you can get rid of that business debt. So you can include prepayment of past. I don't know how you prepay past, but past, present, and future. You cannot use the money to pay government debt. You can use the money to pay payments on your government debt. And so one of the ways to do this is you use this for your operating money, and then you use your operating money that's basically flowing through the business. That's what you use to pay off anything that's a little bit squishy. So paying down that government debt, if you wanted to get rid of it, if you've got a little bit of PPP left over or something along that line, use your operating capital to pay that off, use your operating capital to pay off your investors, because you'll have lots of it because you're using these proceeds to fund your business essentially if you did not receive RRF. And many believe that the reason that they bumped this up to 2 million was because RRF is going to take a while to get through, if it does get through at all. There's still plenty of interest, as I mentioned, but no guarantee. So they put the olive branch out, they bumped it up to 2 million, 10 million for a larger company, less than 500 employees. So they put the olive branch out there. So eligibility, you have to meet the size requirement. So the great big guys, publicly traded, they're not going to make it. If you weren't in operation before 1/30/120, you're not going to qualify. So if you were in operation, the calculation is very simple. It's your 2019 gross receipts per your tax return minus the lesser of the 2019 COGS times 2 or 500,000, whichever is less of those two, minus any EIDL you've already received. And you can, so some people went in and maybe they got a $200,000 loan, they bumped it up to 500,000. Now this new thing came along after 10/8, you can then increase your 500,000 up to 2 million if you qualify. So that's something to keep in mind. You can keep going back to the well. Now, if you've got something in process, you've got to go in and amend that right now. Do not open up a new loan. So if you've got one in process that maybe you asked for 500,000, you haven't heard back yet, you can go in and amend that up to whatever amount you want. Just remember, there's going to be personal guarantees attached with this. One thing in red at the top there, so it's taking several weeks to get loans for less than 500,000, and you need to have a 570 credit score. Anything between 500 and 2 million, it's taken about a month and a half for approval. Not sure what several weeks compared to 1.5 months is, but that's how it's listed in their literature. And you need to have a 625 credit score. So the filing needs 2019, 2020 tax returns, form 4506T. That's just allowing them to share tax information between agencies, so nothing big there. Make sure that you have your details of your PPP and your RRF. That's on they're going to want you to explain how much you received, when you got it. The NICE code, you want to make sure you have that handy. Most people do, but it's easy to forget, and it can hang you up and then time you out, so on and so forth. If you get a loan greater than 500,000, you're going to need a schedule of liabilities, a schedule of any real estate that you own, and personal financial statements are required on owners with greater than 20% ownership. That has been a big hang up for a lot of people, where they've got a minority owner, but they don't want personal financial statements, those particular people exposed. So that's been a little bit of a hang up. If you do take a loan for more than 25,000, you need to have collateral, as I mentioned, personal guarantee for more than 200,000. And then if the applicant's part of a corporate group, it's limited to 10 million overall, as I mentioned. So you may not use the funds to expand your business. You can't go open another unit with it. You can't prepay any federal or SBA loans. You can make current payments, and you can't go start a new business. So on the expansion, the question that I get around that is, I want to open another unit. How do I do that? And the answer is, you use your EIDL loan or whatever government funding program you've been a part of to pay your operating expenses. Then you can distribute out selectively in time intervals to yourself, as long as it's part of your ordinary course of business to make distributions. And then at that point, you can then build a war chest for your new business. Okay, so we'll move on to the basics. We can also come back at the end. I'm very passionate about really using this government money to get your balance sheet right. So if you've got a lot of dangling stuff on your balance sheet, this is the time for you to use this government money and clean it all up. It's a really long amortization, very cheap money, and you should be able to get a good return on that investment. That's the key. If you can't get a good return on the investment, don't take the money. It doesn't make any sense. But if you can get a good return on using 30-year 3.75% money, you should take it, provided that you qualify. So I'm a big fan of that. If you go over 200,000, you're gonna have a personal guarantee anyways. It's collateralized over 25,000. So take the money and clean up your balance sheet and get healthy and get in control of that business again. So this is it's a once in a lifetime chance. It's not, we can't count on anything else coming down the line. So turning back to the basics. So first thing I believe you need to do is go back to your menu. There's been a ton of inflation in the supply chain. People have had to use grocery stores a lot to make sure that they can procure items that are on the menu. If you are out of something, make sure that you tell the guest that you've sold out, not that you've run out or that you have supply chain issues or any of that kind of thing. Just make them think that you're such a good seller, you sold out of things. The first step I would do when I'm engineering my menu is I'd take a look at my menu and I would go straight and try to reduce the size of it 10%. A lot of people have really lean menus already, and if you're so small on your menu size, you can take a pass on that. But a lot of people have begun to creep up their menus again. So you're going to want to take a shot at reducing this. Second thing is really focus on the top 80% of products. So one of the problems with doing any kind of analysis is if you use too much data, it just shuts you down and you don't get an opportunity to make the good decisions that will help you to maximize your margin. So focus on the top 5 sellers. If that's all you did, if you didn't have time to do the rest, if you just focus on your top 5 sellers, your number 1 seller has the most resistance to price increases, so people will buy it anyways. So don't be afraid to take price increases on your top item, and I would say for your top 5 items. So watch your protein sizes. You know that those are expensive. The futures markets are not pointing to any good news that I've seen so far. So you're going to want to watch those protein sizes and adjust them. So a lot of people use an 8-ounce burger. How does a 6-ounce burger eat? Can you get a smaller bun? Can you make it eat better? Whatever it is. So watch those protein sizes and adjust them. Doesn't mean you have to take them away. Give the guests plenty of less expensive ingredients. Make sure you fill those plates up, whether it's, if you reduce your protein, increase something less expensive on that plate so that you can keep a good full plate. The engineering new beverage menus is where I think a lot of the better operators in the industry have really focused their energy is how do I engineer a great beverage menu? Because that is often the incremental sale in restaurants. You go to restaurants to eat, the incremental sale is beverage. When you go to taverns to drink, the incremental sale is food. So you want to make sure that as a restaurant, you're engineering new beverage menus. So add infusions. You can take less expensive alcohol and infuse it with something, let it age a little bit, and it tastes great. And you've got a better cost on that. Add barrel aged products. Add more non-alcoholic drinks. So there is some risk, alcohol awareness month is in April. We've also got what someone called Dryuary, which is January. And then there's the newest millennial movement, which is sober curious. So we're not sure where that's going to go. Many of the experts believe it's another fad, but there is a movement around sober curious. So what's it feel like to be sober all the time? So really focus on those non-alcoholic drinks, coffee, soda, all of those kind of things, as well as develop menus that taste really good, that are a little more complicated than pouring a soda. If the alcohol awareness months in January and sober curious get a good foothold and start reducing the consumption of alcohol in restaurants, you'll have a solution ready to go. Plus, sometimes people don't feel like drinking, so it's a great alternative there. The next piece is to make sure that you're raising your prices every quarter. I'm speaking as a consultant, not on behalf of the association. So raise your prices every quarter. Get a price increase immediately, right now. If you haven't done it in the last couple of months, do it right now. The forgotten one is beverage. A lot of people have raised their food prices because they see food going up, but they've forgotten that beverage needs to be raised as well. The labor to make those drinks has gone up. So make sure that you are really raising your prices on your beverage as well. So take smaller, more frequent price increases rather than big ones. If you've missed a year or two, you may have to take a big one, but it's better for you to take 3% increases than to take 12% increase right now. So you'll want to take quarterly increases and really watch volatile items. If something spikes in price, you may have to remove it for your menu. If you can't remove it from your menu, put it in a place on your menu that's less conspicuous. So typically in any list of items, the top one and the bottom two, or the top two and the bottom one, sell the best. The items in the middle don't sell as well. So you can take something that was a great seller and you can move that into the middle of a list. It'll probably sell less, but yet your regulars still get to get it. They know where it is. 11% of all guests that walk into a restaurant order the exact same thing every time. So that's going to allow them to get what they want, but you're going to sell less to people that are less frequent diners, because typically 20 to 40% of your diners are first time or not regular diners. So make sure you raise those prices every quarter. And if you haven't done it in the last 3 months, do it now before the holidays hit, because you are coming into paradise. You're going to want to make sure you leverage these holiday prices before you hit to January and February in particular. So then you'll raise them again. So if you raise them now, make sure you raise them in a quarter, say either the beginning of the year or by March. Really focus on gross profit versus cost of goods sold. Everybody gets wrapped up on percentage, and I've said it before, but don't take an item you make $20 a margin on and put a $20 cost on it, cost you $2, because you're going to make less money. Your food cost will look better, your product cost will look better, but you're going to lose money, dollars. We take money to the bank. We don't take percentage to the bank. So focus when you're engineering on the profit per item rather than the percentage. So you don't have to keep, if an item was 25% inflation, and now you're running 30, you don't have to get down to 25% again. You just have to more than cover your cost, and take the approach of I'm going to make more money with this item rather than I need to hit my percentage. So be very, very careful. Managers are really used to managing percentage, which is fine, but adjust their goal percentage after you engineer. So drive your beverage costs down, as I mentioned, with infusions, barrel aged specials, the non-alcoholic program, and then go back to using your checkbook for purchasing based on forecasted sales. Control your inventory, keep it lean. We don't know what's coming next. We don't know what the vaccine requirement is going to do. We don't know what the state's going to do around vaccine requirement. So you're going to want to keep your inventory down to 5 days or less for food. Get less than 3 days, you're going to be running in the store all the time. But 5 days seems to be about optimum, 4 or 5 days. And then on the beverage side, and provided that you don't have a gigantic wine list or a huge liquor list, you're going to want to stay lean on that as well, no more than 30 days. That has a way of really disappearing quickly if you slow down. I've always said that beverage has legs. It somehow just finds a way to walk out. So we don't have to go through this list right now, but this will be in the presentation. What do I look at on a daily basis? What do I look at on a weekly basis? And what do I want to look at monthly or by the period? So if you look, for example, guest check average, I want to make sure that I look at that every week. I don't have to look at it every day, but I want to look at it every week and every month. I want to look at product trends at least once a month. What's going on in the markets? What's my ideal look like? What's my gap between the ideal and actual? Throttle your tablets and to-go orders without losing sales. So control the flow. A lot of people have been just turning their tablets off when the rush comes in. And you need to, a lot of these tablets, they have throttling tools, they have pause tools. Make sure you're using those. So you want to make sure that you're prioritizing the guest ticket times. You don't want to allow cutting. And the tablets, there's nobody on the other side, they just cut. But you're going to want to throttle them to the average wait time, just like you're controlling counts. So if you're getting huge ticket times in the kitchen, you're going to want to throttle those tablets back so that they're not cutting in line. Don't shut them off. Those are sales that you have an opportunity to get, and you need every sale that's coming through the door. And really focus on building your check average. So check average is going to be the key because you want more sales per hour that you're open. So build that check average back up. Forecasting sales. I know it's difficult when you're not sure what's going to happen with the business every day, but we've got enough operating history now that we can forecast sales relatively accurately. And then we need to cost our schedules every day back to that forecast. So schedule them to the costed schedule. Don't just write a costed schedule. Actually schedule people to them and then hold those hours accountable to that. You don't need to cut people. You need to cut minutes. So don't go out and slash your staff to hit your cost. Just make sure that you're trimming and you're tight. So when people come in, start them fast and keep them fast. If you've got people that come in and they're standing around, you're not bringing them in at the right time. You want to bring them in right as the rush is hitting, and they will be fast all night. You want short, fast, energetic, profitable shifts. You want to optimize those hours of operation. So it is an opportunity unlike we've ever had in the history of the restaurant business to optimize our hours of operation. If a shift doesn't work, get rid of it. People are used to checking their phone to make sure that you're open. So now's the time to optimize all of your hours of operation. Don't open at 11 and close at 11. If it's business is saying we need to open at 12, open at 12. Business is saying no lunch, then no lunch. Make sure that you are optimizing your hours of operation. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity to do that. And you need to get through this next 18 months as we kind of suffer through inflation and unknowns, so on and so forth. So labor shortages, we need to make sure that we're optimizing all of the shifts around the business. And use a checkbook for labor too. You're spending money on labor. How much money do you have to spend on that particular day? A lot of people don't do that. How much money did I have to spend for labor based on these sales? Did I spend that amount? The second point is to focus on sales per labor hour in the front and the back, not just labor percentage. We've seen wages fly. So line cook last year, year before, maybe 16, 18 bucks an hour, now 21 to $27 an hour, depending on the concept. So it's gone up quite a bit. Front of the house, obviously, we've had inflation in state and city of Seattle in particular, has seen a lot of inflation in front of the house wages. So we're going to make sure that we're driving efficiency rather than percentage. That's the whole start fast, stay fast thing. So drive efficiency rather than percentage. Focus on sales per labor hour. In the front, set a goal of around $150 per front of the house labor hour. That's going to be tight, but you can do it. And in the back, $140 per food sales per hour. So set those goals and see how you get there. I imagine that a lot of people are in the 70 to 100 range. So you're going to need to really find some efficiencies to get those numbers up. But I think it's really worth going after. Use your tools and manage every shift and every dollar. So around monitoring your labor cost, clock in, clock out every day, scheduled hours versus actual hours, daily, weekly, monthly, sales per labor hours, about the fifth one down there. You're going to want to make sure that you're measuring that for servers, for bartenders, for the front of the house in total, for the back of the house, for line cooks, for prep cooks. Somebody said the other day that was kind of a blinding flash of the obvious. The more hours that the prep cooks have, the more prep you're going to have on hand. And you want to keep that really tight right now. Table turns, focus on those. Payroll reports every week and every month. And crew turnover is very expensive right now. And we've had a lot of ghosting going on and rage quitting. So back to providing positive feedback, we need to remember to use the 10 penny trick. Put 10 pennies in your pocket. And at the beginning of the shift, you've got 10 pennies in your left pocket, and your idea is to get 10 pennies into your right pocket by providing at least one positive piece of feedback for every 1 penny going from one pocket to the other. It's an easy trick, but we want to deliver 9 pieces of positive feedback for every 1 piece of negative feedback, not 49 pieces of negative feedback and 1 positive of general feedback. So we want to make sure that we're providing lots of positive feedback, because there's a lot of opportunities for crew members right now, and they're literally rage quitting. You have a tough conversation with somebody and they quit. If they don't have a foundation of positivity going into those tough conversations, they're going to quit. So make sure you are building relationships with your crew, all of them. They're not just workers. Build those relationships. Make sure they're tight. Make sure you tell them what they're doing right more often than wrong, and use those 10 pennies. So finishing strong is about the last 20%. When we start a project, and they've noticed this with engineers a lot, they get about 80% of the way through and they kind of start petering out at that point. So you lose enthusiasm the longer something takes. We're about 80% of the way through the year. So the last 20%, you need to engage and overcome fatigue. People are tired. I understand that. It took a ton of energy to get back open. But it's time to overcome that fatigue, set the example, and really ride out this year as a winner. So end with a bang, not a whimper. Questions?
I have a question, Rick. Earlier you talked about adjusting the menu, and many of those things relate to increasing menu prices. How about those operators that are concerned about losing customers if they raise menu prices too much, or if they take away items on the menu that's a crowd favorite? How does an operator navigate through that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I wrote an article a few months back that basically walked through the math that if you raise your prices 10% and you lose 10% of your guests, you got to win on your hand. And that doesn't happen because you basically, all of your price increases are incremental. So if I take something from $1 to $1.10, I make that extra dime. Didn't cost me anything. And that's why we want to link this back to efficiency as well. Obviously, you don't want to lose $1 worth of sales to make 10 cents more. So you will get, if you have 60 to 80% of your guests that are regulars, most of them are going to stick with you anyways, and those that you lost were going to be made up with new guests, as well as more than overcome with the price increase. So do not be afraid to raise your prices. I said at the beginning of this whole entire pandemic that there is going to be a separation like there was when I was a kid. It was a treat to go to a restaurant. Then commodity prices got so inexpensive and held steady for so long that grocery and restaurants really kind of leveled out. Now there's going to be a gap again because the labor force is way more expensive than it was before. And you've got a few people running around a grocery store. You've got a ton of people running around a restaurant. The size is way different. The sales per hour, way different. So don't be afraid to raise your prices because there is going to be a gap and people are expecting that. Plus, they've been eating, they ate for a year at a 30 to 40% premium by having stuff delivered to their house. So reclaim some of that.
Actually, that brings me to another point that operators will have questions about, how to effectively manage their third-party delivery business. That will probably increase also during this last quarter, but as you mentioned numerous times, that's also a big chunk of profits that you're giving away to a third party. How would you advise restaurants to deal with that?
Yeah, I would say, if you've got a platform, one of the major POS systems has a platform that you can drive your own third-party delivery through your POS. I think a lot more of those platforms are going to come out, but you're going to want to push people to your website and not straight to Uber Eats or DoorDash or one of the major platforms is going to charge you 30%. You're going to want to drive them through your website to order online as much as possible, because some of those could be as low as 10% as opposed to 30%. The second thing is don't be afraid in the third party platform. People will tell you that you have to have price parity. You do not have to have price parity. So there, a big line item on the P&L now is paper products or to-go supplies. That was very minor, unless you were a pizza place prior to the pandemic. Now it's a major thing. I've seen clients that 10% of their cost of their sales is going to paper products. So we have to have compostable, we have to have special bags, we have to have all of this stuff now. So don't be afraid to charge a premium for those items, and do control that flow. Throttle. You have to manage it like you manage a book of business. And most people just take what they get, but you have to manage it like your book at the front desk. That's how you navigate around the third-party tablets delivery.
All right, we've got a question. Could you clarify when we might expect ERC checks for Q3 of 2021?
For Q3 of 2021.
Yes.
They're working on 2020 first. So you will likely not see that money if it was a 941X, an amended return. You will not see that money. I'd be willing to say you're not going to see it until at least summer. They're going to work through all the 2020 first. It's right on their website, and it's what the IRS told me as well. They have to get through 2020 before they can get to 2021. They're committed to that. The real pain here is that you could end up owing taxes on this and you don't have the money. So that's what we were trying to convey to the IRS yesterday, was that you guys got to figure out how to get through this faster, because you got people that need this money because they also have increased taxes.
All right, well, that's it for our questions. Thank you so much, Rick, for another great webinar. For the audience, we will have this up on our YouTube channel and our website, along with Rick's slides. And once again, thanks to US Bank for sponsoring today's webinar. Any last words, Rick?
Well, I think just that last slide that we talked about, ending with a bang and not a whimper. you set the example for your team. The energy that you carry in, the excitement that you carry in sets the example. So do your managers. You set it for your managers set it for the people. So you've got to make sure that you've got a ton of energy. The energy has to be emitted from us as leaders as we go throughout the end of the year. 2022 is going to feel like a little bit of a fresh start for a lot of people, but we have to finish strong in 21.
All right. Thank you so much. And we will see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.